My son had a high fever at night, but my husband was celebrating a birthday with another woman's daughter. The next day, I calmly proposed a divorce. My husband frowned and asked, "Is it really necessary to make such a big deal out of something so small? To divorce, you'll have to leave with nothing." "All right," I replied flatly. Chapter 1. Seemingly not expecting me to agree so quickly, George looked up at me. "Zoe, are you sure? Once you go for a clean break, you won't get anything, including custody of our son." George's gaze was sharp, and his words were unrelenting. I said, "I know. Let's get the divorce proceedings done as soon as possible." Angered by my attitude, George no longer tried to persuade me. He simply replied, "We'll meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow at 8 a.m. It was more difficult to get the marriage certificate than the divorce certificate. Holding the divorce papers, I tweeted, "Happy divorce." Many people liked the post, including George's first love, Miranda. As I was packing my clothes, I happened to overhear a conversation between George and Miranda. Miranda kept apologizing for calling a married man and blaming herself. George, however, only said coldly, "It has nothing to do with you. Don't overthink it." When I entered the room, Miranda seemed startled for a moment but quickly put on a smile. "Zoe, you're back. I'll go make you dinner." George didn't even lift his head, still dealing with the papers on the table. I looked at them sharply and said, "We're not familiar, so please call me Miss Lee." Also, although I've divorced George, that doesn't mean you have the right to flaunt your presence in front of me. If you want to show off, at least become his wife first. Although, given your current situation, getting the approval of the Koo family's elders seems impossible for you in this lifetime. With those words, I clearly saw Miranda's face turn pale. She was the campus beauty back in university, and even after many years, time hadn't left much mark on her face. She was still as charming as ever. Miranda shivered and said, "Miss Zoe, you misunderstood. That's not what I meant." I waved my hand dismissively. "Whether it's true or not, you know in your heart." George frowned. "Zoe, our issues have nothing to do with Miranda. There's no need for you to be so confrontational." I smiled bitterly, a trace of sarcasm on my lips. George and Miranda had been a couple in college, both prominent figures at the university. One day, when Miranda was harassed by a thug, George found the guy and beat him up. Later, that thug deliberately ran George over with his car. George spent a full year in the hospital recovering. Because of that incident, the Koo family had a very poor opinion of Miranda. During that year, Miranda married a campus bully who had been pursuing her. They had a daughter together. Miranda's daughter was 7 years old, and she couldn't bear her husband's constant domestic violence. She applied for a forced divorce. However, her husband's family had some power, and the divorce dragged on for a year without success. That was when Miranda thought of George. The first time Miranda called George was on our son's birthday. George had only said one thing, "Son, I'll be back soon to cut the cake with you." Because of this, our son sat at the table waiting all night. Every time he heard a sound at the door, he looked up hopefully, only to lower his head in disappointment. Such things happened more than once. Since Miranda appeared, George had been breaking promises more and more. He had promised to take our son to the amusement park on the weekend, but when Miranda called, he patted our son on the head to comfort him and left. Chapter 2. I promised my son we'd go on vacation during the summer, but Miranda's call ruined those plans. I promised to attend my son's parent-teacher meeting, but because of Miranda, my son became the laughingstock of the entire class. I had argued and thrown tantrums, but it was all in vain. Instead, I just pushed George further and further away. My mother-in-law came to me and said, "George is a responsible man. He would never do anything to hurt you or your son. As long as you are still the wife of the Koo family, George would never abandon you both." I nodded. It was true. This was also one of the reasons I gave up custody of our son. He always dared to leave without any hesitation, simply because he relied on me being there for the child. But now, without me, could he still go and help Miranda with a clear conscience? The next day, a piece of news titled "The Mistress' Bold Entrance to the Original Wife's Home" caused a huge stir online. Miranda's face wasn't blurred, and familiar people quickly dug up her background. Aya sent this the cold and aloof campus beauty from university? Now she's reduced to being a mistress. TSK. The original wife hasn't even left. And the mistress is already shamelessly stepping forward. How disgraceful. I hate these pity-seeking White Lotus types. They're so disgusting. Mistresses deserve to die. I totally agree with the above comment. The public opinion online quickly turned against Miranda. I thought this wave of criticism would make her tone down, but instead, it worked in her favor, and she divorced her campus bully husband. Apparently, her husband's family had some status, and having such a daughter-in-law was a disgrace to their reputation. So they immediately divorced her. Miranda then demanded to split the couple's assets. Her husband's family submitted the video I posted online as evidence, proving that Miranda had cheated, and they ruled that she must leave with nothing. Her husband's family, being patriarchal, declared they would not take custody of her daughter. Anna, my son, Luis, called me, "Mommy, I haven't seen you in so long. When are you coming back?" The little guy's voice was forlorn. "The nanny said you don't want me anymore. Is that true? Did Luis do something to make you unhappy? Mommy, tell me. I'll fix it. Please don't leave me, okay?" I froze for a moment and said coldly, "Which nanny told you that?" It was Lisa. My son whispered, "Sweetheart, Mommy has to go out for a while, but I haven't abandoned you. If anyone talks nonsense in front of you again, just tell Daddy or Mommy. Even though I'm not at home, I still love you very much. Then I'll be at ease. Mommy, I just transferred $5 million to your account. Take care of yourself while you're away. Eat well, drink well. Grandma and Daddy gave me a lot of money. Luis has money now, so Luis can take care of Mommy. Mommy doesn't have to work so hard." The little guy said this seriously. I smiled and reassured him. I then called George, who promptly fired the nanny and told her to pack up and leave. He also warned that anyone who spoke ill of him in front of our son would also be kicked out. On Friday afternoon, George couldn't pick up the child, so he called me. When I arrived at the school, I unexpectedly ran into Miranda, who was wrapped up in a thick coat. Seeing my composure, Miranda instantly seemed to age 10 years. She glared at me and said, "Are you happy now? Your video has turned me into a street rat. My Anna is so innocent. You're a mother too. How could you be so cruel? Don't you fear that the retribution will fall on your own son?" I glanced at her indifferently, casually fiddling with my freshly done nails. "I'm not satisfied enough." I shook my head. "Your fate should be 10 times worse than this. Your daughter is no angel either. It was a wise decision for your husband's family to disown her. You bitch. You've ruined me. I won't let you off the hook." I didn't bother to respond to her enraged outburst, merely waving my hand. "You're always welcome." After spending the day at the amusement park with Luis, George showed up at sunset. "Miranda called me today." George looked at me. I simply responded, "What? Coming to defend your mistress now? You know that's not what I meant. Could you stop speaking so harshly? You weren't like this before." Then what was I supposed to be like? Staying at home to cook and clean? Taking care of everything and managing the house? Or was I supposed to obey you blindly? I countered. He was stunned for a moment, not knowing how to respond. People change. Before Miranda appeared, you were the ideal husband in other people's eyes and the perfect father in our son's heart. But since Miranda showed up, what have you become? I started counting on my fingers. I've calculated it since Miranda appeared 2 years ago. You've broken your promises 99 times in these 2 years. Every time you promised our son something or made a promise to me, it would all vanish with just one call from Miranda. I looked straight into his eyes. "Tell me, do you dare say all of this has nothing to do with Miranda? We're alumni. She was in trouble, and I just helped her out as best as I could. I swear, I never cheated on you." I smiled and turned away. It's not just physical cheating that counts as cheating. In my eyes, emotional cheating is just as bad. In Zoe's world, there's no tolerance for this kind of thing. Miranda became a public pariah, hiding with her daughter Anna wherever she could. George couldn't bear to see them suffer and placed them in a villa not far from his home. For this reason, Miranda would frequently knock on his door, pretending to be bringing the child over for some nourishment. George, however, simply laughed off her kindness. Chapter 3. When my son mentioned this, his face was full of displeasure. I don't like the supplements Aunt Miranda sent. They taste terrible, he whispered to me. Aunt Miranda comes over every night, apologizes to Daddy, and asks if they can go back to how things were before. I smiled. It was to be expected. Miranda is now infamous, and the only way she could find refuge was by clinging tightly to George like a lifeline. How could she pass up such a good opportunity? I teased my little one. What else do you know? I also know that Daddy doesn't want Aunt Miranda to come to the house often. Daddy said I should study hard and not let these things distract me. My son proudly tilted his head, looking quite pleased with himself. I said, when Mommy is not around, you should listen to Daddy. He won't harm you. George's work was keeping him busy, and since the child refused to bond with the nanny, George had no choice but to call me. For the sake of our son, we had agreed not to tell Luis about the divorce. Returning to this house, I felt as though I had stepped into a different world. When my son saw me, his face lit up with joy. Mommy, I got first place again in the math Olympiad. I smiled and praised him. Such a simple reunion between mother and son felt ordinary to me, but for George, it seemed to stir up a storm. A week later, George called me. Zoe, what do you mean by this? We agreed to part on good terms. Are you really trying to bankrupt the Koo family? Have you thought about Luis's future? Even though I didn't see him, I could imagine the furious expression on George's face. What do you mean? What have I done? I replied coldly. The Koo family's confidential business files were leaked. That file was in the safe at home, and the password for the safe was known only to you. George said angrily. Zoe, do I need to spell it out for you? George, if you're losing your mind, go get treatment. Don't throw around baseless accusations. I paused, then continued. Ruining you would do me no good, and it would only hurt Luis. I'm not that stupid. Don't you know why I gave up custody of Luis? He can only get the best education under the Koo family's roof. I would never do anything to ruin Luis's future. The Koo family holds significant positions in both the business and medical worlds. Luis's elite school costs millions in tuition every year, not to mention the other living expenses. Use your pig brain and think carefully. Who has been coming to our house so often? Who repeatedly comes under the pretense of delivering supplements? Who is most likely to steal the files? Do I really need to say their name? By now, the answer was clear. George spoke directly. It's impossible for Miranda to have done it. He paused, then added, Miranda has no reason to harm me. Ha! I sneered, then hung up the phone. I immediately pulled up the security footage from the guardhouse and sent it to George. You already know the answer in your heart. Why deceive yourself? The footage clearly showed Miranda coming to the house for the last time while I was out taking my son to dinner. Half an hour later, Miranda, holding something in her arms, glanced around before sneaking out of the villa. I demanded that the police be called, but George firmly disagreed. He said, calling the police now would cause a huge negative impact on the Koo family. We can't do that. I snorted coldly and didn't respond, hiding behind the excuse of protecting the company. He was clearly favoring that woman. George, you certainly don't deserve your parents' efforts. This incident also planted some doubt in George's heart about Miranda. While taking my son to the park, we unexpectedly ran into Miranda and her daughter. Miranda's lifestyle had clearly deteriorated significantly. Anna looked at my son with anger in her eyes. Her small face carried a malice that didn't match her age. Anna pointed at my son and cursed. It's all your fault. Koo uncle won't accept my mommy. Your mommy doesn't want you anymore. You're just a worthless bastard. I coldly narrowed my eyes and slapped Anna hard across the face. Miranda, if you can't teach your daughter, I'll do it for you. I rubbed my sore wrist and looked at her coldly. After the slap, Anna's anger flared even more. I'm going to kill you. It's because of you, evil woman, that my mommy is suffering like this. Miranda, if you can't discipline her, I'll help. I looked at her indifferently and said, in my world, there's no concept of don't bully the weak, so don't try to use that moral high ground to guilt trip me. Seeing the vicious look in my eyes, Miranda froze for a moment, then pulled Anna away. Who was trying to charge at me? Miss Zoe. I think there's some misunderstanding between us. I never intended to break up your family. I also hope George does well. George is just helping me out of school loyalty. I waved my hand dismissively. Stop using that tired excuse on me. I know exactly what kind of person you are. Seeing this mother-daughter pair really put me in a bad mood. I grabbed my son's hand and started to leave. Just as I turned around, a sudden shove came from behind. I immediately reacted, turning around and kicking the person straight into the nearby artificial lake. After all, I had trained in Taekwondo for a few years, and handling this mother-daughter duo was a piece of cake. Anna floundered in the water, crying out, "Mommy, save me!" Miranda glared at me with hatred. Zoe, I didn't expect you to be so vicious, to treat a child like this. I shrugged. If you don't get in there and save your precious daughter, she's as good as dead. Miranda couldn't swim, and she screamed in panic. But the people around us weren't going to risk their own safety for a strange child. They just stood by, watching, too scared to intervene. Just as Anna was about to drown, a figure suddenly dashed toward the lake. Chapter 4. My son's eyes lit up. Daddy. It's Daddy! George rowed towards Anna with all his might. The people on the shore immediately threw out a rope, and George grabbed it, pulling both of them to safety. George lay on the ground, gasping for air. When my son saw this, he immediately took off his little jacket and draped it over George's body. Daddy, are you all right? My son wiped the water off George's forehead, asking with concern, Anna, my Anna, if something happens to you, Mommy can't live anymore. Miranda wailed as she held Anna. Anna looked at me with fear in her eyes. Zoe, I know I was wrong. I'll never show up in front of you again. Please, let me and my mommy go. I promise. I'll stay away from Uncle Koo from now on. Please, give me and my mommy a way out. I raised an eyebrow. This little green tea, pretentious coquette, really knows how to act. Miranda wore a face of pain. Zoe, if you're angry, take it out on me. But the child is innocent. Why did you push my child into the water? You're a mother too. How could you be so cruel? The people around us now looked at me with more scrutiny. My son grew anxious and shouted, It's not like that. It's not like that. Anna pushed me from behind just now. Mommy only fought back to protect me. George slapped my son hard across the face. Luis, how have I taught you? Who taught you to lie? My gaze turned icy. My son, holding his cheek, cried out, I'm not lying. What I said is true. Anna called me a bastard no one wants, and then she tried to push me into the water. Mommy only fought back to protect me. George shouted angrily. Luis, how dare you lie? He threw my son's jacket onto the ground and angrily pointed at him. At this moment, Anna spoke up. Mr. Koo, please don't blame Luis. He was just trying to protect his mommy. It's all Anna's fault. She's the one who annoyed Miss Zoe. It's all Anna's fault. George was about to comfort Anna when the bodyguards rushed over in a hurry. I narrowed my eyes and immediately ordered the area cleared. This amusement park was my family's property, so the clearing of the area was extremely fast. I instructed the bodyguards to take my son to change into new clothes. Only then did I turn my cold gaze toward the man in front of me. Hold him down, and beat him, I ordered directly. The bodyguards froze. Miss, this is your husband. George stared at me in disbelief. What? You can't follow my orders anymore? If you want to keep your job, do as I say, or all of you can leave. Thinking of the bright red slap mark on my son's face, I was enraged. Zoe, how dare you? George's words were cut short as the bodyguards immediately slammed him to the ground and began beating him. The bodyguards were careful, not hitting his face or any vital areas, but their fists landed repeatedly on his body. Miranda and Anna trembled in fear, watching from the side. You're committing a crime, Miranda said in a low voice. I looked at her with interest. If you want to take the beating for him, you can. Miranda, frightened, dared not say another word. After a thorough beating, George lay on the ground, gasping for air. I looked down at him, speaking softly. You should be thankful that you're Luis's father. Otherwise, after slapping Luis like that, I would have ordered the bodyguards to break your hands. My family has ties to the underworld, and you should know that killing 1 or 2 people is not difficult for me. My words sounded like a spell to the 3 of them. Oh, and considering your performance, I've already spoken to Mrs. Koo. The Koo group can have a new successor. All your cards will be suspended, and the assets under your name will be seized. I spoke slowly. Mrs. Koo, out of consideration for her son's relationship with you, has left you a villa. The rest, you'll have to fight for yourself. I stood up and waved my hand. Good luck. George didn't believe me and immediately called Mrs. Koo. When Mrs. Koo learned that her precious grandson had been slapped, she was already furious and, without hesitation, agreed to my proposal. The current successor of the Koo family was George's older brother, Peter. When I arrived at the Koo group office, Peter was lazily reclining in a chair, deep in thought. Didn't we agree not to meet again? Peter pushed his glasses up and spoke lightly. Did my useless brother piss you off again? Peter was always like this, getting straight to the point, hitting the nail on the head. After 2 years of interacting with him, I still couldn't figure out his way of thinking. The Koo brothers were quite different. The older brother, Peter, was meticulous and a cunning old fox. The younger brother, George, was a hopeless romantic, all heart, no courage, and full of hesitation. When I married into the Koo family, my parents asked for my opinion. After weighing the pros and cons, I chose George, and my condition was that if I married George, he had to be the successor of the Koo family. I said, Zoe's husband, will never be beneath anyone. The Koo family agreed without hesitation. They needed someone by George's side to help him deal with Peter. At that time, I had talked to Peter for 2 years. He was attracted to my beauty, wanting me to stay as a trophy wife, helping him fend off other women and attending various business events with him. I was attracted to his connections and influence. Peter was quite generous in this regard, never hesitating to introduce his network to me. We both knew the truth. He didn't love me, and I didn't love him. We were just talking without any real emotions. When I proposed to break up, Peter didn't even look up, simply responding with a cold, "Fine." Chapter 5. After reaching an agreement with Peter, I didn't want to stay any longer and turned to leave immediately. Peter smiled slightly as he watched my somewhat hurried back. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye, and the private investigator I had sent kept sending over the latest updates. George had lost his position as the successor and became more and more hesitant in his actions. At first, it wasn't too bad, but as time went on, George was increasingly disliked by Miranda and her daughter. Life is built on the little things, and when conflicts accumulate bit by bit, Miranda eventually exploded. If it weren't for that Zoe woman, I'd still be living happily with my daughter, leading a good life. How did I end up like this? Miranda screamed. I've had enough. I've really had enough. George, you're useless. You can't even control a woman. I was blind to ever have chosen you. After days of emotional venting, George snapped. You need to speak with some conscience. If it weren't for you, would I have had to deal with those thugs? Would I have spent a year in the hospital? Would I have ended up like this? And your daughter, such a schemer at such a young age. Zoe already sent me the surveillance footage from that day. It was your daughter who cursed Luis and tried to push him into the water. Zoe only fought back to protect him. You two women, not a single good one between you. Anna's face turned red with anger, and her neck bulged. Don't you dare insult my mother. She rushed at George to hit him, but George shoved her to the ground. Seeing her precious daughter being mistreated, Miranda became ruthless. She grabbed the scissors from the table and stabbed them directly into George's body. George widened his eyes in disbelief as he stared at the scissors stuck in his chest. Blood poured from the wound, dripping onto the ground. When George collapsed, Miranda shook in fear. She trembled as she picked up her phone. Hello, Pablo. I've killed George. You promised that if I killed him, you'd take me and my daughter back. Something on the other end made Miranda's face turn pale. Pablo, you dared to lie to me? I won't let you get away with this. The other side ignored Miranda's threats, only letting out a mocking laugh before hanging up. When I received the news, George had already been sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. Meanwhile, Miranda and her daughter had been arrested by the police. George was seriously injured, while Miranda would likely only be sentenced for intentional injury and could be out in 3 to 5 years. But Miranda, determined to bring her own ruin, poisoned her daughter to escape custody. On the way to the hospital with her daughter, Miranda managed to escape. When Miranda opened her eyes, she found me sitting in front of her. We were in an abandoned underground room, soundproof on all sides. No matter how loud the noise, no one would hear it from outside. "Zoe, what do you want?" Miranda tried to untie herself, but the more she struggled, the tighter the ropes became. "I've come to send you on your final journey." I smiled, watching her fearful expression. "You want to kill me?" Miranda stared at me with wide eyes, looking at me as though I were a demon. "No, no, no." I shook my head. "It's not me killing you. You, in your fear of facing the consequences of the law, have committed suicide, and you carry a life on your conscience. But you're truly cruel, poisoning your own daughter to escape custody. I really admire you for that. Your daughter didn't even realize that she was going to die at your hands." "You're talking nonsense. Don't curse Anna. I just gave her some laxatives. It won't harm her life." Miranda screamed in fury. "Is that so? Your daughter's body is still in the morgue at the hospital. The cause of death is the drink you handed her." "No, it's impossible. You're lying. I won't believe you." Miranda's expression grew crazed. I took out my phone and shattered her last illusion. On the screen, the news clearly showed how Miranda had poisoned her daughter and how she used her daughter to escape. "No, it's not possible. How could it be? I only gave her a laxative. Why did it turn into poison?" In a fit of rage, she managed to break free from the ropes. "Anna, my Anna, Mommy never meant to harm you. Why did it turn into deadly poison? How did it end up like this?" Miranda screamed in despair, and then something seemed to click. Her bloodshot eyes fixed on me. "It was you, wasn't it? You switched my medicine, didn't you?" I snorted coldly. "Why do you think Pablo divorced you? Don't you have any idea? You still foolishly hoped Pablo would help you, but it's all just a dream. Oh, and one more thing, the confidential documents in your safe? I deliberately leaked them to you." Miranda was dead. Her death was brutal and unrecognizable. When she was found, not a single part of her body was undamaged. Pablo found me, smiling. "Ms. Zoe, it's been a pleasure doing business with you." He extended his hand. I took a step back, avoiding his hand. "I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't want to continue entangling with him, so I turned to leave. "Ms. Zoe, don't leave so soon." Pablo stopped me and quickly took out a tiny listening device. His fingers swiftly worked on his phone, and our conversation from the underground room was broadcast in full detail. I stared at him in disbelief, like a mantis stalking a cicada. He had been waiting for me to be careless. In the end, I was the one who had let my guard down. Chapter 6. I asked in a low voice, "What do you want? Don't think you can threaten me with this. Miranda's death is your doing, and Anna got into trouble because of the medicine you gave her. Don't try to make me the scapegoat." "But who can prove that?" Pablo laughed, his words chilling. "The people who went to rescue Miranda were Zoe's people. Miranda's last visitor was also Zoe. Who would believe that Zoe isn't involved in Miranda's death? I've already had all the call records between me and Miranda destroyed. Do you really think that if I hand over the recording, Zoe and her family won't become the target of everyone?" I walked down the street toward the Coup Group building, feeling an ice-cold chill spread through my limbs. I thought I was free, but it turned out to be just another abyss. Pablo said, "All I want is simple. Just hand over the Coup Group's confidential documents to me, and I will make sure this recording never reaches you again." I'm not as stupid as Miranda. I already knew the confidential document you leaked to her was fake. Only that fool thought it was real and celebrated. He sneered. "The document is with Peter now. I can't get it," I replied. "Don't underestimate yourself. Ms. Zoe, I believe in you. If the document isn't delivered in 3 days, that recording will be the best gift I give to you," Pablo said with a malicious smile before turning and leaving. I dialed Peter's number. "Peter, I need to talk to you. Let's meet at the cafe across from the office. I'll wait for you." After hanging up, I stared at the office building before me, lost in thought. I couldn't afford to gamble on whether he would come down or not, so I could only wait. When I saw him leave the building, I felt a heavy weight lift off my chest. Riding the private elevator up to the office, I couldn't wait to lock the door behind me. I'd been to this office countless times, and I was already familiar with the location of the safe. If nothing had changed, the confidential documents would be in the safe. The safe's code, as long as Peter hadn't changed it, was George's birthday. I typed in the password I knew by heart, but it was wrong. For a moment, I stood frozen, stunned. The password had been changed, and I had only 2 more attempts. What could the password be? What would Peter set it to? I reassured myself and tried typing Peter's birthday again, but once more, it was incorrect. Now, there was only 1 attempt left. If I failed again, the safe would be permanently locked and an alarm would go off. I thought for a long while, then carefully typed in my own birthday. Ding! The password was correct. My mind raced. Why had Peter changed the password to my birthday? But there was no time to dwell on it. I carefully opened the safe. To my shock, it was empty. I froze for a long time, unable to process what was happening. Why was it empty? Where were the documents? Are you looking for this? Peter's voice came from behind me. I jumped in surprise and turned around in disbelief. Peter was leaning casually against the wall, holding the very documents I had been looking for. When did you get here? I asked, my lips dry. I never left. The one who just went out was a substitute, Peter said. And with that one sentence, he sentenced me to death. He had watched me frantically search for the documents, helpless and foolish, like a clown. Just when I thought success was within reach, he dealt the fatal blow. Under Peter's hawk-like gaze, I told him everything. Peter merely watched me thoughtfully without speaking. After a long pause, he sneered, "You're still as naive as ever." This document was the lifeblood of the coup group, and once Pablo got his hands on it, he would never spare anyone, including me. I knew that much. If I don't do as he asks, the first person to suffer will be Luis. I'm not afraid of death, but Luis has never done anything wrong. He doesn't deserve to suffer, I said hoarsely, tears falling down my cheeks as I grabbed Peter's hand. Tell me, what should I do? What can I do? Peter's face wore an unreadable expression. He gently wiped away my tears with his finger. Don't worry, Pablo won't cause any trouble. He's nothing. As I left the company building, all the sadness on my face instantly turned to cold, hard resolve. I rubbed my thigh, where I had pinched myself earlier, and let out a bitter laugh. I never thought I'd have to resort to playing the pitiful victim in front of Peter. There were dangers ahead and behind. Every step felt like walking on needles. If it weren't absolutely necessary, I never would have gotten entangled with Peter again. Having spent 2 years with him, I knew just how terrifying he could be. If Peter acted, Pablo wouldn't stand a chance. Chapter 7. When I arrived at the hospital, my son was sitting next to George, watching over him. I sent my son away, then turned my attention to George, whose face was pale. My heart was filled with mixed emotions. Just as I was about to leave, George slowly regained consciousness. He looked at me, opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The doctor says you're fine. After resting for a while, you'll be able to leave the hospital, I said, preparing to turn and leave. George grabbed my hand, and the oxygen mask on his face slipped off as he struggled. Zoe, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you and Luis. I frowned. I don't know what you're talking about. Let go of me. Zoe, I had a dream. I dreamed that you and Luis had both died. George's eyes were bloodshot. After you were killed by Miranda, Miranda played a double game right in front of me. She and her daughter teamed up to bully Luis. Later, Luis developed depression and jumped off a building on a rainy night. Miranda and Pablo worked together to drain the Coup family's wealth. I took Luis' ashes and staged a car accident on Miranda's usual route. I guess that was my way of avenging you and Luis. George's voice choked with emotion. This dream felt so real. Every time I think about the scenes in my dream, my heart aches, and I can't breathe. I stared blankly, lost in distant memories. Zoe, those things really happened, didn't they? George asked carefully. He wasn't expecting an answer but continued on. So, you set up one trap after another to lure Miranda in. Once Miranda died, Luis would be safe. When I left the hospital, my legs suddenly gave way, and I collapsed onto the ground. George asked, Zoe, can we go back to the way things were? For Luis's sake. I shook my head. It's too late to go back. We can't go back. You don't love me, and I don't love you. You want to reconcile with me just because I happen to be the right one for you at this moment. Nothing more. As I was about to leave the room, George asked me one last question. He asked why I didn't take revenge on him too. With your intelligence, it would be easy for you to get back at me, right? I left him with only one sentence. You are Luis's father. My child's father. If something happens to you, Luis will be heartbroken. The next day, Pablo was dead. He had gotten into an argument with a cousin at the company and was stabbed in the carotid artery with a pen on the spot. By the time the ambulance arrived, Pablo was already dead, and the cousin presented a mental health certificate, so the law couldn't touch him. Meanwhile, Pablo's company was swiftly divided up by all the shareholders, with Peter taking the lion's share. When I saw the news, I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, but at the same time, I felt a sense of relief. I knew this was Peter's doing. With all the obstacles cleared away, I held my son in my arms, feeling a joy that was a mix of loss and recovery. It felt so good. This time, Luis, Mommy will finally be able to protect you for the rest of my life. Looking back on everything from the past life, I could only feel an overwhelming pain. I hated Miranda for her repeated schemes, and I hated George for his inaction. Watching my son driven to depression and forced to jump to his death by Miranda and her daughter, an overwhelming rage surged inside me. When I opened my eyes again, I was back before the tragedy happened. Everything was still normal, and there was a chance to fix it. This time, I would make sure Miranda and her daughter never recover. Mom, what are you talking about? Luis doesn't understand. My little one looked at me with wide eyes. It's nothing. Sweetie, Mommy had a bad dream, but now that I see you're still here, I'm not afraid of anything, I said softly. When I went back home, holding Luis, Peter was sitting on the sofa, smiling as he looked at me. A chill ran down my spine. Peter silently spoke. My prey, welcome back.